and welcome to the show. I'm Brenda Kilhofer. I'm your Cheap Mama, and you are on the Cheap Mama Life podcast. Today, I have a young lady that I met through our parents' website. Those of you that were following our issues at our school board know that I got very involved in that, and I met Gidget through some of our mutual concerns around the school board. And she is now homeschooling or hybrid homeschooling her daughter, and has done an extensive amount of research into all of the options that are out there. And today's show is really going to be about, the education, why she made her choices, why we've made those kinds of choices to shift education, really help moms out there that are having some second thoughts about whether it's public education or maybe you're homeschooling and thinking of going into public education. Really kind of give a lay of the land and help to reassure you that the decision is yours. You are the parent, you're the mom, and you know what's best. And I think we'll be able to provide some resources and some directions to look at. So I'm going to take a quick moment and allow Gidget Stencil, who is my guest today, to introduce herself. Gidget, how are you today?
Good. Hi, how are you?
Good. What should the audience know about you? What made you decide to go the route you're going?
Luckily for me, I work from home. I've worked from home for my daughter's entire life. She's almost 10. And the biggest driver for me to pull her out of school was those board meetings and the district's lack of transparency in regards to the critical race theory, AKA the equity, diversity, and inclusion, and all that work that they were doing. I just didn't feel comfortable leaving her in the public school setting. It was so divisive. Parents on both sides were so angry. There was so much turmoil that I wasn't comfortable sending her to school and hoping everything was going to be okay, and hoping she wasn't going to get a teacher that was, buying into all this critical race theory and was going to try and implement it somehow, like you're hearing about across the nation. And bottom line, I just wasn't comfortable. And then at the end of the year, I got her benchmark test scores from her teacher, and she had done really well with distance learning when we were home, and she was in class online, and her benchmark scores were terrible. So even with the teacher's best effort through COVID, her scores were horrible. So not only were they failing my daughter and to keep her safe and to respect me as a parent in my choices and not force critical race theory, but they weren't educating her. She wasn't anywhere near grade level. And so at the end of last year, I really was contemplating pulling her out. I'm a big fan, always have been, of the public school system. We've never had a bad teacher in the district that we've been a part of. Her experience at school has always been good. So it was really hard to make the choice to pull her out of the public school and put her in homeschool. But she has made leaps and bounds progress over the summer. So I don't regret it so far one bit.
Awesome. So I know you and I have talked, and you did require some tutoring over the summer to get her caught back up after you were where the benchmark skills were so low. Tell me a little more about that.
Absolutely. So when we got her scores, I realized, she's not going to be prepared for fourth grade, right? They really haven't done her any service this past year. And I'm sure she's not the only child whose scores were super low. And I asked the teacher and the school, if they were going to offer any type of enrichment tutoring. Like, I was still willing to give the brick and mortar school a chance over the summer, and they weren't going to offer anything. So my son, years before, had done Kumon, and Kumon is really meant as an enrichment program for reading and math, but you can use it as tutoring if that's where your child is at. They will test them in, kind of start them out at a lower level than where they test, so they feel like they're accomplishing right away. It's small packets. They don't normally spend more than 15-30 minutes on a packet, so it's quick, but it's every single day. It's repetition, and it takes it back to the basics, how we learned. It's not Singapore math. It's, math. I forget what the math was called that we learned, but it was regular math. You know what I mean? Not all these like tips and tricks and totally taking apart a problem just to add 2 + 1. They don't do any of that. It's just regular adding, subtracting, multiplication, division. It's the basics. And so, and reading as well, the phonics, they teach phonics, which a lot of the schools don't teach anymore. So between the Kumon and just a summer of reading and learning, she's really made a lot of progress, but it wasn't cheap. We paid almost $2,000 for, the Kumon. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's, I know that that's a deterrent for many families, is that they feel like perhaps, so there's 2 things, right? Or 3. Like, I think the main arguments that I had in a homeschool was, 1, time. I mean, yes, you're a work from home mom, and we both know you still work. And you don't get to control when your telephone rings and you get to serve a client or a customer. You don't have, from one day to the next, your schedule is probably very much in flux. I know as a work from home mom, I may have appointments at 9, noon, and 4 p.m. And tomorrow, those appointments could be at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and 1 p.m. And so I know that tends to be a big deterrent or argument from homeschool. Like, how am I supposed to create this homeschool regimen when I'm in flux, right?
So you have to find the program that works best for your family. And like you and I have done, we've kind of taken it hybrid style. Like, we're taking the online public charter, but we're kind of tweaking it and making it our own and work for our schedule for our kids. So for Olivia and my work schedule, we really try to do 8 to 3. We try to keep our day between 8 and 3. But like today, she's doing something extra in the middle of the day. Plus she had testing today. So she's losing 2 hours in the middle of the day that is going to have to get tacked on somewhere. Right. So we'll do it this evening. And then if we don't, I mean, we have to get it done eventually. So we'll do it tomorrow or, whenever it fits back in. So there is a lot of flexibility with the online model that we're working with. The K-12 is what we use, the Arizona Virtual Academy. So, but then there's things like Brenda, where, I considered briefly getting her into one of the Brenda micro schools. That way I could have a break, and I could take her somewhere for, 3 to 5 hours a day. And honestly, I probably would have pursued that if she was at grade level. And maybe I will change my mind when she reaches grade level, because right now I've taken her education back into my own hands. I want to know what she's learning and where she's comfortable and, where she needs more help. And I'm going to really press into this K-12 academy to help her where she needs it. And if they don't suit her needs, there are so many other programs out there, like Arizona Virtual Academy, or I'm sorry, ASU virtually, I don't remember what it's called. It's like ASU Prep or something like that. There's Great Hearts now has a distance learning online academy. They're on a wait list, but they actually have 4 hours every day of live instruction. And then it's almost exactly like what the district was doing last year with distance learning, where they're on with the teacher with breaks, of course. And then the teacher gives them, okay, do A, B, C, and D, and then you're done for the day. And that's how Great Hearts is working. So I think that's a great model. And if that would have been available at the beginning of the year for us, we probably would have looked into that further.
Yeah. So, so obviously that's one of those, that's typically a lot of the concern and confusion is around how do I do that as a mom, especially working at home mom. And, I think there's a lot of other things in play there too. Another solution that has nothing to do with that is I think a lot of moms, and let me know if you agree or disagree. I think a lot of moms that don't work from the home or even work in the home, and have children typically are still paying for, daycares or
Absolutely.
other expenses
Before and
related
after care.
or before aftercare or sports or athletics so that they
For
can
sure.
work.
Right.
And oftentimes I think if people really look at their budgets and look at their work schedules and look at what their outgo is to be able to continue to work outside the home, a lot of times coming home is an option. If taking their education, I think that's the key that you said is, right now, yes, there's a lot of options, but right now, I don't know how you feel, but for me, I feel like it's more than important than ever that we take control of the education that our children are receiving.
100%. The schools are failing our kids right now across the nation. Like Arizona, I don't even know how our district has the rating that it has. It is so it's so misleading. It's just more, of that lack of transparency. They're hiding behind this, this rating that they're not entitled to, in my opinion. Yeah, they're all nice. Everyone's real sweet. That's great. The kids love everybody and everybody loves them. That's great, but they're all, failing. So
right.
I don't know how that's going to work, but it is time as parents, if at all possible, to take their education back into our own hands and make sure that they're learning the fundamental things that, they took away Halloween and Christmas. And, I understood religious reasons why you don't want to exclude or make kids uncomfortable that don't celebrate those holidays, but there's a way to incorporate all of that without eliminating it. And now they're starting to talk about, taking away the pledge or removing the flags from the classrooms. Like, I just can't tolerate that. Like, my daughter is being robbed of her public school education.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so we put the flag up, we put the pledge up in my office because those are things that are fundamentally important to me that my daughter grow up learning. And so if it's at all possible for a parent to make it work, there are so many options, even if it's like a micro school or a charter. You got to be careful with the charters because some of them are, implementing the CRT and all that stuff that we're not really super fond of, but
well, and I think that's just it. I mean, most of us didn't, that's what really got me into the CRT battle, so to say, is because I didn't even know what it was. Like, I had never heard of it. I think at the end of the day, we have become a society that is so hands-off in raising our own children that we're not even aware of what they're being taught. We're only involved if they've gotten in trouble, if they haven't turned in an assignment, if the grades are bad. But if everything looks good and seems okay, then by and large, we are so busy. And not moms who are listening, please don't feel like this is a condemnation of you. I feel like it's
not at all
what the society as a whole has created. We're just so busy and there are so many demands on our time because we have to make money. Obviously, there's so many demands on our time that what I really feel like should be our first priority, as a parent, not mom or dad, but our first priority as a parent is to raise those kids.
Right.
And raise them according to the values that we believe that they should have, not the values that a government or a politician or even, a well-meaning superintendent or teacher might have for them. It is our job to guide that character, those values, rather than
social and emotional learning belongs at home,
Yeah. Instead of
not in schools.
Absolutely. Instead of just turning it over to somebody else. So, and I think that was one of the blessings that, bringing school into our homes when we didn't want it to be in our homes really
100%.
did offer us an opportunity to see what was lacking.
See
and
into
there's
the
some other,
classroom.
right. And you mentioned the district and how on earth are they A plus? And I'm learning now, if you look around and I wonder, how can it even be a factor of COVID? I mean, we got an email last night. Hey, we need cafeteria workers. We don't have enough cafeteria workers to feed your children. Last week it was, we need bus drivers. We don't have enough bus drivers to feed your children. And when I look into it, that's not just an Arizona problem.
No,
it's a
absolutely
problem
not.
across the US. And, certainly, yes, COVID contributed to that shortage by far. And I think a lot of eyes again were opened. Like, these parents had to leave because they had to take care of, many of these workers had to leave because they had to take care of their own kids, or they left the cafeteria because maybe they were working the cafeteria to be working the same school hours their kids were working.
Sure.
And now their eyes have been open to all of this stuff, or, they may do without that paycheck for that time and have chosen differently, which I think is incredible. It's amazing. I don't think this is a new problem. I think our eyes are just opening.
Yeah. It's been a slowly evolving takeover, I feel like, of our children's education by government. And you're right. The superintendent and, administrators at the district level are probably well-meaning, but they're completely, they've drank the Kool-Aid, and they're looking at it from, above their station, looking down, and we're looking at it from the trenches with our children, going, look, our children are drowning in lack of education. You need to help. Like, here's one problem at a time. And the problem is not equity. It is not diversity. It is not inclusion. The kids are being included, different holidays and cultures are being incorporated. I even looked at some of my son, who is 24, some of his old schoolwork and school books that we have saved, and they were very diverse, right?
Absolutely. And I want to come back to that when we come back after a break, because you brought up the Kool-Aid, and you, as you were sharing that, a thought came to mind. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we will be right back with you.
Hey, let's take a short break real quickly, because I want to tell you about Crypto Unplugged. I was just ecstatic when this landed in my lap, because Crypto Unplugged is simply about a journey of 3 individuals that is entering into the crypto space. Now, we all know that crypto is becoming quite popular right about now, and yes, we need to transform our wallets. Literally transform our wallets. So they talk about overcoming their obstacles and defining the popular opinion to finally be in a place where goals can be realized. And they want to get you there too. Yes. Why would I be selfish with all the wisdom that I've been binging lately? Just listening to all of their different past episodes and their most recent episodes. Crypto Unplugged has special episodes that's tailored for the novice, those who are in between, and those who are even advanced. You can hear some of the stories and resonate with this whole crypto amazing puzzle. Join them on the journey. Don't go nowhere. Simply go over to Spotify, wherever you listen to any podcast. Tell them that Marcus R sent you with a review. Of course, leave them a review and tell them that I sent you, Marcus R, from Transform Your Media Network, from all your special and favorite shows that you binge over here. Add them to your favorites list, add them to your subscription list, however you gotta do it. But listen to them right now, because this crypto thing is blowing out of the water and you're gonna get lost. So until next time, many blessings, peace, and lots of love.
Hey, and welcome back to the show. You are on the Cheap Mama Life podcast on Transform You Network, and I am interviewing Gidget Stencil, and we were just talking about, the diversity of holiday, specifically Gidget started talking about the holidays. And I have an interesting story to share on that. My son walked up to your point that you looked at old books and all of these different holidays were there. And my son was looking at the calendar and he's like, what's Rosh Hashanah? And he couldn't even say what Rosh Hashanah was. And I was able to explain to him. Why was I able to explain to him? Because I learned about it in my elementary school.
Yep.
We talked about the fact that some children may not be there that, during that time frame, because that was the holiday that their faith, shared, and I believe the student even got to share some of the different things about that. So
which is amazing.
And, when the Christmas holidays came up and things like that, I remember, it very much being a conversation that not everybody, you had that conversation. Then again, not everybody celebrates this. Now, a lot of you may. Who else celebrates something different? What do you do? Exactly. What are your customs?
And that is inclusive. instead of excluding a holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So another one. So we talked about really the time factor. So the next big one that I know, my older kids object to, I was really nervous about. My son is one of those outgoing, he's, brightly dressed, want to be everybody's friend, talking to everybody. And I was worried about socialization and would he socialize with others? And of course, my daughter would be like, homeschool kids, my teenagers are like, homeschool kids are weird. They don't know how to do, you don't want to homeschool. I don't want to be one of those kids. When they get into the teens, they have a stigma that they attach to the homeschool kids. So is that something that you kind of went through and had concerns about? And
my son said exactly the same thing when I was talking about homeschooling. His little sister, he's like, oh my God, you're going to make her weird. So there's definitely that stigma out there. She doesn't know that stigma exists. But as far as the socialization, it can be very isolating if you let it, but we are determined not to let it be isolating. So school is school. The program that she's, and again, it depends on the program that works best for your family, and the program that she's in, she is live a little bit with other kids. So she does see and interact with other kids in her virtual classroom. However, we do all kinds of activities outside of school to keep her socializing. And we've formed friendships with, friends that she made in preschool and kindergarten. To this day, I just make it a high priority to maintain those relationships for her. So she has friends that she's had since she was 2 that we still socialize with on a regular basis, even if it's just meeting after school at the tea house to grab a boba for 30 minutes. It's something, you know what I mean? And then sports, we do horseback riding as a sport. I know a lot of other people do like soccer, and, you can meet friends and kind of create like little friendship groups. And I also started on Nextdoor, because I don't have Facebook, for our area, a homeschool group. And I'm trying to coordinate eventually like field trips or play dates with people from within our community that are also homeschooling or interested in homeschooling, or even that are at charter, because when you go to a charter, kids are from all over. They're not in the same neighborhood. So then it's hard to find, it's almost like homeschooling, right? It's hard to find friends because everybody's kind of more spread out. So with the Nextdoor group, I'm hoping to create some community involvement to keep these kids socializing that way as well.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, because my older son was private school almost his entire life. And by the time he was in high school, the high school was 15 miles away. So as a mom, I don't want my son drive, and then kids are coming, from as far as 15 miles in all
Right.
directions. So,
Right.
when he's like, hey, can I go to so-and-so's house? And they're wanting to get in a car and drive. I'm like, no, you're a teenager. No, you're not going 30
Right.
miles away.
Right. Right.
And it was harder to maintain those friendships in
Right.
the public and likely charter, which is why which really is what made it so sad for me to take mine out, because I had recognized that. And I thought, man, how awesome would it be for my son to have those relationships that he gets started. But to your point,
Right.
The equine, mine is going to be part of 4-H and the hoof prints and what else, some of the different, opportunities there where there's kids,
Right.
and,
and you can usually tell right off the bat when kids are going to they gravitate towards each other when they're going to be friends. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And normally the parents, you gravitate towards the parent, and it's just like an easy thing. It just happens. And so I really would encourage anybody that is coming out of a brick and mortar school and doing whatever type of homeschooling, virtual schooling, whatever you decide to do, charter, just to really foster those friendships, make it a priority. And then don't worry about the socialization.
Right.
It'll happen organically.
And that was the first thing I noticed when my kids did go to public school, because I had gone into the private school world worried about, well, if they're in the public school, I mean, who are they hanging around and who are their influences and all of those things. And the reality was, when my kids left private school and went to public school, they sought out friends that were like-minded, that were, were positive influences. They didn't just fall into the bad crowds that people tend to worry about. And I think, that's one of the nice advantages with homeschool is, like you said, you brought up the community here. You and I have become friends, and we would not have known each other had this not happened. And so we found some commonality in what we want our children to learn, how we want them to learn, what our common values are. And, there's a saying, even as an adult, that you are the sum of the 5 friends you hang around the most. Why do you think our parents said, we don't want you hanging out with Johnny down the street that, that smokes,
whatever,
and if your parents didn't say that, I don't know, maybe you were Johnny.
Maybe. Exactly.
But that's, so I feel like it really just gives us an opportunity, to your point, we've talked about field trips, we've talked about different opportunities, and there's so many great communities, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Nextdoor, whether it's a formal community that's created by like a Brenda or the K-12 or any of those. There's a lot of great communities out there to help.
And education is changing. Like you said, parents are waking up. So this is only going to grow. So, I think we just need to make the decision that works best for our families for now, take some pressure off of ourselves and go with the flow a little bit. But really, I would encourage anybody who can remove their kids from brick and mortar public school during this time to do it. It is just not a healthy environment currently for any of our children to be in, period. And it's unfair for the teachers to have to teach under these, most teachers to have to teach under these circumstances. And it is unfair for the children. They're being robbed of the public education that they are entitled to because of all this political bullcrap and all of this masking, non-masking, vaxxing, non-vaxxing bullcrap that's being forced into their education.
I would agree. And even if you set all of those things aside, I mean, the reality is when you just take a look at some of the little things, which aren't so little, not having cafeteria workers, not having bus drivers. Today we're quarantining this group of kids. Tomorrow, now it's this group of kids. Today, this teacher is sick. I mean, just the fear alone
It's unstable.
that situation creates.
It's an unstable environment. It's not productive. It's not conducive to learning. I mean, they did their best last year, but they made a lot of critical, selfish mistakes, I think, last year. Well, our district, but just nationwide with how they flip these kids all over the place, in school, out of school, quarantine, hybrid, you know, that's just not right. It's not right. And so
well, I agree.
I was done.
And you brought up the fact that education needs to change anyway. I mean, I think, you know, we haven't changed education. It was created during the Industrial Revolution. We have like so far grown out of the Industrial Revolution.
Absolutely.
We've gone into an information age. And I think you and I were having a discussion not too long ago. And I will be careful how I phrase this because I don't think people always understand it right. But the bottom line is your daughter's also a first grader, right?
No, she's a fourth grader.
She's a fourth grader. So my son is first. I would say that by the time your daughter and my son enter the workforce, they are probably not going to have to know how to read. I mean, let's face it, they're already speaking into phones. It's translating it into different languages for them. You know, it's typing it out. It's doing all of those things. And most people, even our age, are no longer sitting down and reading a book. They're listening to it on Audible. And now I want my child reading, because I can look at history and I can look at how did slavery exist in the US? Well, it existed in the US because the slave owners ensured that the slaves couldn't read and be educated so that they could understand what, you know, so they were able to oppress them. So that being aside, yes, I want my children to know how to read. And yet in our public school system, they don't teach cursive anymore.
Nope, they sure don't.
And what is the document that governs this
the Constitution
country
written in cursive?
It's written in cursive, right?
Indeed.
You know, how much, I mean, my kids receive cards. Now, granted, my grandmother's handwriting is bad, that they can't read because it's not been taught.
Yeah.
You know, and
we're learning cursive. I went to the dollar store. Well, I'm not prepared, but they're on the floor over there. And I bought the cursive alphabet letters to hang up in my office because, you know, she's going to start writing in cursive. Just start doing it. You know, if you have an ELA, you know, summary that you have to write, it might take you twice as long, but let's just do it in cursive. Here's all the letters. Do your best.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, there's just so many things that we're not preparing them for, and yet you don't see, you know, a lot of the computer integration I see isn't even, you know, it's games, it's things that, you know, maybe aren't really, you know, getting into the, you know, we're getting better. You see a lot of the robotics and things like that, but our future is 100% technology. I mean, if you look at, just an example, it is estimated that I think over 90% of trucking jobs are going to go away.
That's crazy.
Now, people say, well, wait a minute, you know, that now. And when you look at COVID right now, of course, that's the biggest amount of work. You know, those guys are working crazy hours, but Amazon already has, you know, contracted with, I believe, Tesla, all of these electric trucks to where you can have one truck and four behind it. I think it's up to four or five that travel with that one truck. So now you've only got one piloted truck and the rest are all smart driving. You know, they're already playing with drones that drop things off, right?
Yeah, like
and people think, well,
Afghanistan.
Sidebar. And people think like, okay, well, what about, you know, what about construction? Surely that's never going to go away. But if you go, I mean, they are 3D printing entire homes
for
people
crazy.
to live
I saw that.
in South America. So, you know, technology is rapidly replacing, and we're still spending time. I mean, let's face it. Again, I want the kids to be able to critically think and know math, but will they ever use any of that when they grow up? No, they're going to pop it into a computer and here it is. Here's the algorithm. Go take care of it. You know, but what about the things that are important? You know, what about character? We don't teach that anymore.
Well, they're trying to teach it in public school. They're just not teaching it to my liking. So
Right. And so, I mean, and that's just my point is as parents, we get to decide what it is and how it is our children learn, what's going to really set them up for success, because no matter how you look at it, this industrial age teaching that we're now putting this new age thinking and attitude into really is not serving our children. And then you toss on, the fact that you can't get them there by bus, so how does that support those families that are working families? I mean, if now they can't get their children to school because they don't have a bus, or now they
Right.
can't get them to lunch because they it's just it's just
a lot.
crazy. So
Yeah.
there's one more huge objection I know that people have, or concern that people have when it comes to homeschool. So we've gone over, the time piece of it. We've gone over the, the, what do you call it? The,
Like the driver decision as to why.
Well, the socialization, so we'll come back and we'll discuss the other big objection when we get back. And then I know you've got some stuff to caution parents as they make these decisions on. So we're going to take a quick break and come back and finish up.
Hello, my people. Just want to take a quick break to tell you about our wonderful sponsor, North Bay Freight. I know you might be getting tired of just sitting around the house and you may not be going anywhere whatsoever, but I want to tell you about a wonderful opportunity, an opportunity of a lifetime. Make up to $100,000 traveling from East Coast to the West Coast. Man, when I say that, like, I get tired of seeing the same old, yes, I do. Sometimes I want to just go on the road myself, but they are hiring. You can get your CDLs right now. Just simply hit them up on Facebook or on Instagram at North Bay Freight. And by the way, if you happen to be a corporate executive that makes decisions about where to ship your stuff, they can help you out too. They can get it anywhere, no matter how big or how small. They do it across the nation. North Bay Freight. Check them out.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your cheap mama, Brenda Kilhofer. You are on the Transform You Network, and I am talking with Gidget Stencil today, and we are discussing something that I think is a big discussion everywhere, homeschool. And, there are so many people that I feel like really want to do it and they don't, because they either feel, they don't have the time. Two, they don't want to rob their children of the socialization. We've addressed both of those. I'm going to put the last two things into one conversation. So the third one is, well, I can't do it. I wasn't good at school. I can't do it for my kids. I don't know what I'm doing. How do I plan it? How do I put it all together? And the other piece of that being cost. I think a lot of people believe that it's cost prohibitive, whether it's, I can't work, I have to work fewer hours, I can't get into my schedule, or, let's face it, there are a lot of homeschool programs out there that cost a good bit of money. So let's dive into those, the cost and I just can't do it, which I think flows into the cost. I think there's parents that say, hey, I could do it, but to do it free, they think it's going to be so much time and effort and energy, and they don't know enough. So to go get a package that lays it out for them, they feel like, okay, no, we can't do that. So what's out there for them?
So there are curriculum out there that you can buy, right? And I'm sure it's, on the cheap end to thousands of dollars, but really there are so many resources online. You can create your own curriculum. There are 5 standard classes that the state of Arizona requires the children, homeschool children included, to complete each year. And it's like the reading, the math, the social studies, science, and I'm forgetting the last one, but there's 5 core subjects. And you, in Arizona anyways, can teach those subjects however you see fit. I, being a type A personality, wanted something very structured and I wanted the assistance of a certified teacher. So I opted for a online charter. So we do have a teacher, and the entire curriculum was sent to me. I've went through, looked at everything. There were a couple things I didn't care for, pulled it out, told teacher we will not be doing this, send us something else. And we're plowing through now, but you don't even have to do that. If you want to teach your kid about science, there are all, we found this website that I've been sharing with the homeschool group called Supercharged Science, and they offer free science experiments and lessons, and then you can purchase more if you like it. But every week there's a free one, so you can use that. You can, go on a field trip. Like we went and saw the alpacas up in Prescott. There's learning all around us, and it doesn't have to be in a box learning. So if you're working and you don't have time to homeschool your kid, you don't have to do it Monday through Friday, 8 to 3. It doesn't have to look that way for you. And it doesn't have to look, we follow a schedule, kind of a school schedule here because it works for us. But if I was working outside of the home, my daughter probably wouldn't be doing structured lessons until, maybe we do 1 or 2 lessons before bed at night, or maybe we would do weekend learning and field trips. You can make it your own as long as they're hitting those 5 core subjects.
And if you have to travel or go on vacation, you can take it with you and do what you need to do.
You can.
I know it. We just started a week ago, and Friday was I didn't have a plan. I didn't necessarily know what it was going to look like because we're in the stage where we're counting our hours. So, but we didn't have anything structured show up until later this week,
right?
As it was his first week. And so we knew we wanted to do PE, which benefit moms. If you have a hard time getting yourself out to go work out and do your works, this is a great homeschooling is a great way to get yourself outside of it because you got to log it.
An hour a day.
So Jeremiah and I decided, hey, we're going to go. He wanted it. We were talking, we had driven by the previous day, and this is how easy and unstructured it can be. We were driving to a friend's, I was selling a house, and we drove to my friend's house, and he's pointing to the mountains. It's like, I'd really like to hike those. I'd love to do that. And I'm like, well, we have a membership at the mountains by our house. We will do a hike for PE tomorrow. So we got up the next morning after the big kids left for school. We drove up to White Tanks. And there's a small, 1.2, it's a really short, small,
the little loop.
Nice paved road called the Rainbow Trail. So we took that up to the falls, and, there's petroglyphs, all over the place from that. So as we're walking, he's asked, we're looking at the petroglyphs, and I'm like, man, that's a great idea. When I get home, I'm going to go look up a video so he can learn more about the petroglyphs. Exactly. And then as we're going, he looks up at the mountain, and from his cartoons and things, he's like, that's an ancient forge. I'm like, what's an ancient forge? I'm like, tell me about an ancient forge, right? I'm like, what is that? And he's explaining it. So I'm like, I've never heard of an ancient forge. How do I do that? So we started looking that up. So now our art project became him drawing petroglyphs and his ancient forges. And now I'm learning about ancient forges.
So you got art, you got PE, and you got social studies, all in one.
And then there's a nature center. So I was like, let's go get a book.
There's your science.
Well, and I was really hoping to get a book on ancient forge because I was still trying to figure out why he was saying that mountain was an ancient forge.
No clue.
They didn't have one. But then at the nature center, they had all the reptiles. And of course, while we were out, he stopped and looked at caterpillars. You know, it's a particularly rainy season. There are frogs everywhere. So and then he says, well, how are mountains formed? So I was able to find an entire series on the History Channel about how the earth was formed. For free. And so, you know, that morning walk became a full day of education that we got to log. And then all I had to do was use what the school had provided for math and reading. And what an incredible day.
Right. And then you can really enrich their interests. You can really pursue, you know, we can dial it right down to what they're interested in, not a classroom of 30 kids.
Right. And then and you know, and the best byproduct is over the last week, I heard things like, you're my favorite mom. He only has one mom, but, you know, lots of hugs. He has, you know, he is really, you know, we've got to celebrate. So mine is very much a promoter or sanguine, if you've ever studied personality styles kind of child. So, you know, when we're working through the problems, he's got that one-on-one attention, and we can do a high five. Great job, you know, problem by problem as we get through. And now suddenly he's not sitting at a desk worried about getting in trouble for not having homework or doing that. He's engaged, he's enjoying it, he's having fun, and I'm speaking to his personality style.
Yes.
And you know what? We had kids. It makes me sad that I didn't do it sooner with my older, because the bond that we're creating, that what we are learning has been incredible. And so I personally would encourage parents, whether you love the school system or you don't love the school system, give it a try, whether it's a couple years, a year or two, or
6 months.
The memories that we are creating have been unbelievable. And it really has empowered me to become more of the parent, the main role model, which we should be in our child's life, and then, you know, delegating. I mean, there's a lot of things in our lives we can delegate. And quite honestly, I'd rather be delegating some of the, you know, delegating the other stuff than education. Like, okay, you know what, Stofers, I delegate you for dinner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Versus, you know, and so often we just don't do that. So let's jump in before we finish up today. You had some pretty dire warnings for parents.
A cautionary tale, yes. So I feel like the mass exit from public school has the administrators a little on the offense. When I went in a couple months ago to withdraw my daughter from school, the ladies at the desk were pretty short with me, not very embracing at all. And when I asked to withdraw, they said, well, where is she going? What are you doing? And I said, well, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing quite yet. I just know I'm going to homeschool. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. So I told them that I was planning to homeschool. And they said, okay, you know, sign this. So I showed it to you. I don't know how we can show. Anyways, the print on this form that I signed is super tiny. They filled everything out. All I did was sign my name at the bottom. They had even written the date in for me. And then when I got home, I was looking at it, and in this tiny print, they had checked mark W4, attendance record showing 10 consecutive days of unexcused absence or status unknown. Now, just 3 or 4 lines below that is W9, transfer to be home taught, which is what I told them I was planning to do. But they opted to check W4. So I thought it was weird, and I took the form and scanned it and sent it to a friend of mine who is a principal at a charter. And she's like, oh, you need to get that fixed. Because whether they would have followed through with this or not, but had I not registered her with the state to homeschool, or had her enrolled in another form of school like charter that reports to the state, they could have marked her as truant. They could have turned me in as truant because I signed the form that said W-4. And which I want to point out, she's never missed 10 days of school or not on her fault anyways. If they send her home,
right,
because of COVID, that's on them, not her.
the quarantine, right?
Yeah, but yeah, so just be real cautious when you're withdrawing that they are marking, the reason you're withdrawing should be to homeschool should be W-9, not W-4. And I have since gotten them to fix it. I had to go to a higher up administrator and put it in writing and send her the form. She did not offer much in the way of an explanation as to why it was marked as W-4, other than that's just what we do. That's just what we do was my blanket answer.
And that's important, because I know when I pulled Jeremiah, I was not sure what, it was it was just one of those, like, I knew in that moment that this was not going to work, and enough that I went and removed him immediately. So I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that was not going to be the situation anymore. So I simply went and signed him out, and then followed up with a letter to the district and to the principal and to the teacher, and stated specifically what I was doing. But I think, on the flip side, I, like you, entered an online charter school. So the charter is obviously takes care of making sure that, hey, this child's enrolled here. But make sure, just don't assume that because you've enrolled in a homeschool curriculum that you're covered by the state. Make sure that you're asking, what is it I need to do to ensure that, hey, and parents, I don't think that, please don't take this as conspiracy or whatever, but we really need to ensure that we are protecting our children and ourselves. There was just a news article about a mom whose custody was taken away because she did not get a vaccine. And that was in Illinois, Cook County, Illinois. She and the father were in a custody battle over money. The father, the father was just he was trying to get child support or whatever, and the judge took it upon themselves to remove all visitation from her until she got vaccinated. So, parents, I know we're all making big decisions around education of our children. Make sure if you have to consult an attorney, and there are places out there for free, make sure that you're covering all of your bases, protecting yourself and protecting
and the
children.
Best way to do that is to fill out the form to homeschool with the state and let them know you intend to homeschool. And then anything you do outside of that, it's like a blanket coverage. So we went ahead and enrolled online charter. So we're like double covered. So we were registered to homeschool, and we actually enrolled in online charter. So
Now, Gidget, one of the things you'd also brought up, because we had talked about the insecurity about, can I do this? And I think we've kind of addressed that. There's so many resources, but then also the cost, right? You talked about there being some low cost programs, but you also just shared that there's a couple things. One, I think from that parents need to be aware of is our own tax dollars, right? If you have exited the school system, and let's say your child participates in, you send your child to a charter school. Maybe there's cost for uniforms, there's cost for other things. Depending on the charter school, take and direct your tax dollars to those charter schools.
That's right.
Get it away. If you're not taking advantage of the public school system, make sure you're moving those tax dollars and those tax credits.
And we can in Arizona, we can dedicate where our state taxes are spent. So we just have to tell them at tax time where we want the money.
And ask your neighbor, if your neighbors in your districts and your friends in your district that are registered voters in your school districts are paying for have them redirect. But you also mentioned there's another credit.
Right. So there's another program that just opened up, I believe, on the 20th of this month to families that are withdrawing from public school. It's a $7,000 grant. You have to apply for it. So there are some parameters in which to qualify, but it's up to $7,000 to help pay for homeschooling. So it'll help cover curriculum. It'll help cover field trips, it's for the parents to spend on their children's education outside of the public school system, any way they see fit. So I really encourage, and I believe the funding is limited. So once the money, the whole package is gone, it's gone for the year. But I would encourage anybody who is considering homeschooling to go ahead and apply for that money and just see what you get. And there's lots of free programs out there for homeschooling and lots of free curriculum. There's all kinds of online and public charter curriculum that is free. But then there's really expensive curriculum, and then you can do your own curriculum.
Yes.
So, luckily in the state of Arizona, we have quite a bit of options. And then, the tutoring can get a little expensive, but this grant would pay for that tutoring.
Absolutely.
So.
And then to your point, I mean, I know, I don't think we mentioned it, but even the charter that you and I ended up enrolling, the virtual charter actually provided computers.
They did.
And
and a printer.
all of the books, all of the, we didn't get a printer. I don't know that they just felt that we needed it. Or it's just not here. I don't know. Maybe we still will get one. But I mean, they provided all of the books, even down to different supplies to do art.
Yes.
Supplies for the science projects.
Yes.
A couple musical instruments, little, sticks and tambourines and so for math, all of the manipulatives that they might need, all of it just came, boop, I enrolled, you're approved. And all of a sudden I saw all these tracking numbers. So and to your point, you brought up we've talked a lot about Arizona. So I know that we're going to have listeners that are in states that are outside of Arizona, outside of states like Florida, outside of states like Texas and other states that really do support school choice. If that's where you're at and everything that we're talking about resonates with you, moms and dads, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to encourage you, get out.
Yep.
Get out of where you're at.
The sooner the better.
Go to wherever it is you're going to best be able to help your child. These children are our future. There is no doubt, if you're frustrated about what you're seeing in the United States when it comes to masks and vaccines, we aren't anywhere yet. I spoke to a gentleman just this morning, who lives in Canada, and they are not allowed to travel from state to state without a vaccine on an airline. If you go to, you can see in Australia, they're unable to leave Australia at all to come, and many, and not even allowed to leave their home and being cited for leaving their homes. So if you are in a location that is not giving you the choice for education, it's not giving you the choice, it's your rights are more restricted than you want them for yourself, whether it has to do with school or whether it has to do with anything else, I would encourage you to, do whatever it takes. The good thing is that we can do all of this education online. You don't need to stay put. You will be able to find and support. In fact, whether maybe you're unemployed where you're at, or maybe you're afraid to leave your job, I can tell you that in Arizona, every door you walk into,
and so many work from home jobs that will support, a parent that does want to really do homeschool. There are so many work from home jobs hiring right now. Like I just got a notification in my email, just random, for, oh my gosh, what was it? It's like a heavy equipment, Granger is hiring for call center jobs from home. And the starting pay is, I believe, $17 or $18 an hour, which isn't bad. Yeah. So if you're wanting to transition your kid home to homeschool and you're not really stuck to your career in any way, I would say make the change.
And
I mean,
you know
what's
what?
the worst case scenario?
Even if you
They can
are,
always go back to public school. They can't not take them back. So,
and even if you are, your employer may be one of those that's open to you working from home.
absolutely.
So it never hurts to ask. So I would just encourage you. I think we are, there's a lot of opportunity, especially in states that allow choice for schools. So please, if you are in one of those states where you feel like, I don't want this, I'm not okay with what's going on in our education system, and you feel forced, you know what, reach out, find us on Facebook, find us on Nextdoor, Instagram, feel free to email the show, Brenda at cheapmamalife.com. I'll put you in touch with Gidget. She's an incredible resource for homeschool. And there's other resources she can point you in directions and help you start to study it. So anyway, Gidget, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I moms, dads out there, I just encourage you to, trust your instincts, trust your gut, and go with what you know is right for your child. Don't,
100%.
All right. Thanks for being here. Any closing words, Gidget?
I don't think so. I just want to copy what you said. Trust your guts. If you've got that feeling in the bottom of your stomach when you're sending your kid off to brick and mortar every day and you're just like, oh, that's how I felt. And I'm like, nope, we're done. Trust your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for joining me today. And we'll see everybody next time on the Cheap Mama Life on the Transform You Network. Have a great day.